All right, let's get started. First off, everybody, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We were supposed to have Manish with us today. He had some international travel that came up last minute, so he's not going to be able to make this session, but we're still going to try to cover everything that we had planned. And today I am fortunate enough to be here with Chris Martin. He works closely with the enterprise teams that are right in the middle of the shift that we're going to be talking about today. Chris, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Perfect. Hey, everybody. Chris Martin. I am a sales leader over here at Rezolve.ai. As Rob mentioned, I work closely with teams to help them in the Agentic AI shift for employee support and shared services. I've been in the ITSM space for over a decade now, so I'm really experienced in the ITSM employee services space. I'm really looking forward to the conversation today, Rob.
Perfect. I completely forgot to introduce myself. My name is Rob. I work here at Rezolve.ai as a creative director and content strategist. And Chris, I want to start here.
Yep.
Most shared services teams today are still running the way that they have for years.
Yep.
They're still dealing with a bunch of tickets, email chains, and approvals bouncing between systems. And it works, until it doesn't. And what we're starting to see now is something quite different where work isn't just getting routed anymore, it's actually getting done. And that's what we mean when we say agentic workforce.
Yep.
So today, let's keep this grounded. And we're going to talk about what this actually looks like, where it works, and what changes when it's real. So, Chris, let's start simple. Everyone's hearing AI agents right now. But depending on who you ask, it means something completely different. When you're talking to teams, what do they usually think that AI agents are, and what do they think that they do?
Yeah, Rob, that's actually a challenge today, right? Because AI has gone through this evolution, right? This journey of, you had classical AI, you had generative AI, you had agentic AI, and now you have this multi agent framework with true agentic agents that actually work together. So a lot of it is just education, talking to people, and for some folks, AI is a chatbot that just answers simple questions. But we've come a long way from there, right? So there are some folks that you kind of need to take that journey together, and you say, hey, we're not here anymore, right? In regards to Rezolve.ai, we're actually handling work end to end with agentic workflows and true agentic agents that work within a multi-agent framework, right? So really just kind of giving that story, giving them the picture on this is where you are today, and this is where you could be, right? In terms of an end-to-end workflow.
Yeah, that makes sense. So when you strip it down, what actually makes something an agent versus the example you just gave, a chatbot answering a question or an automation with a new label?
Yeah. So some folks get the confusion around agent versus automation, right? When you're talking about automation, as some folks even think that might be an agent, and it's really just predefined steps. An agent is dynamic in its decision making and tool usage, right? So now you have something that has intelligence behind it that can truly think, can truly reason, and make decisions intelligently and autonomously. That is what makes a true agentic system.
So I'm curious, do you see this more as an intelligence shift or an autonomy shift?
I think both, honestly, if we're talking about it. I mean, the level of intelligence from where AI used to be to where it is now is enormous, right? It can do more, and there's just this crazy buzz that's going on in terms of AI and what can it do for us as an organization. And the autonomy piece is just as important, right? You don't want to have to essentially babysit an AI, because at that point it's not really bringing any value for you. It's not getting any work done. But if you can actually have an agent that do, some of that level zero work and can actually be very advanced in terms of even doing the level 2 and level 3 work, now you're talking about real ROI and real work being completed from end to end.
So can you give me a real example of, something that people can picture inside their head of what an actual workflow might look like in this agentic nature?
Sure. So, I mean, if we're talking about, maybe I can tell a story here. If we're talking
Sure.
about, a classical AI chatbot, right? Somebody might ask a question, and it's not really thinking, right? It's using keywords, semantic search, and it's just providing like a word for word document that it thinks might be relevant based on like a confidence score or something along the lines of that. When you're talking about generative AI, right? You have that RAG architecture on the back end, retrieval
Mhm.
augmented generation, chunks the data, stores it in a vector store, and can provide intelligent responses where it's not just providing the document, but it has some degree of intelligence there, right? Now, when you're talking about agentic, now you're talking about multi-step reasoning, taking action, making decision. So the example I can give is, let's pretend I said, hey, I need to expense this invoice, right? And
Sure.
I send it in. If it's a classical AI or maybe even a generative AI, it says, here, this is how you do it, right? Well, doesn't really help me. It gives me some insight, doesn't actually do any work for me. But if we're talking about an agentic system, you could upload a document. The AI can read the document. It can actually look at the ERP system. It can validate, hey, this is the information I need in order to submit this. It looks like it's in this pending state. Would you like me to go ahead and notify these folks
Same
to go
thing.
ahead and escalate this issue for you? And then, hey, I can also every step of the way keep you notified on what's going on. And now you're talking about something that's actually completely handling the work for you. So that's a huge step in a direction for autonomy and also the intelligence piece.
And that's where, in my opinion, things start to get super interesting because we're not
Yeah.
just talking about one agent here. We're
Yep.
talking about multiple working together.
That's right.
And Chris, when organizations start moving in that direction, what actually changes within?
Yeah. So, I mean, listen, there's no shortage of agent studios, right? I mean,
Mhm.
if we pick on Microsoft Copilot Agent Studio as an example, I was working with a customer the other day who said, "Hey, we've built like 80 agents." And all these agents are doing different things, and yeah, we're toying around with it. And I said, "Hey, great, what's the adoption?"
Mhm.
And they said 0. Nobody's using it. You know why? Because it takes time to bake and develop an agent, one that actually
Sure.
makes a real difference and delivers real outcomes. So, and that's why we're here, right? That's why we're working with customers, because we have our agent studio and we have baked agents that have been proven and have been tested, and we're now expanding that capability to actually bake more agents to deliver it to our customers, while also giving them the ability to configure and customize their own agents. So in terms of what changes, right? You see folks now trying to solve particular business problems. If they spend time trying to understand what that problem is and how to solve it, and actually using an AI agent that is a specialist in that field, now you have teams of people working with teams of agents, and those teams of people are now elevated, right? They're working on things that need more time
Mhm.
for, and their energy and their effort to work on it, while all of these like really high level things that take a lot of time, that isn't as important, you have the AI that's actually facilitating that, so it's elevating those folks quite a bit.
Yeah, that's definitely a struggle point with teams that I hear often because it sounds straightforward, but it's just not that easy. It's not always that easy to shift into.
Yeah.
And so at some point to leadership, this stops becoming interesting and starts becoming something that they take very seriously. And
Yeah.
where in your conversations do you see that moment happen?
Well, I think there's a light bulb that goes out, right? I mean, AI is not going away, right? It's here to stay, and it's changing everything, right? Me personally, I use it for every aspect of my life and my job. And really, if you're in a competitive situation, it doesn't matter if you're a logistics company, if you're in retail, you have to be moving at light speed and you have to be adopting AI, because ideally, if you're not, your competitors are, and they're going to be moving faster than you. So there is this notion from the C-suite to the director level to even the end employee. It will make them more productive. It'll have them be more efficient. They'll get more work done, and it will set a competitive edge against the particular industry that they're in. So it is important to adopt it in all areas.
Yeah, let's make this real, Chris.
Yeah.
Let's take something like, I know you gave an invoice example earlier. Let's take something like payroll or invoice processing
Sure.
and talk to me for a second about how that works today. Like, what does that look like inside most organizations not using an agentic workforce?
I mean, that's a good question. I would say it varies from organization to organization, right? I mean, if you're talking about folks that, are still kind of doing it with email, maybe spreadsheets. You've got folks sending in an email invoice. You've got an analyst, from the finance ops team looking at that invoice. Maybe they're pulling up their ERP system. They're looking at it. They're doing a manual check to see if it matches. Maybe they're uploading it and then creating a manual ticket. And maybe they message somebody on Teams or on Slack or sends an email, hey, can you look at this invoice and approve this variance, right? uh, that's the old way of doing things, right? Now if we're talking about the agentic piece, you send an invoice into Microsoft Teams. The AI reads that invoice, can go ahead and validate it against the ERP system, can automatically create a ticket for discrepancy and send that approval directly through Teams so that individual can get it done. Now you're talking about a lot of save time, and the automation there is pretty incredible.
Yeah, I did. I seen an example the other day where the agents were able to stop a duplicate from even getting processed, notified
Exactly.
everybody
Yeah.
involved, and it was pretty interesting. So, where do teams usually feel the impact first when they bring this agentic workflow into their workflow in life?
Yeah, listen, I think for most customers that we work with, it's automation is a journey, right? You don't usually come in and say, hey, we're going to do everything all at once. In some sense that could be a recipe, not for disaster, but for the sake of it, it's not going to go as planned, right?
Sure.
You want to outline your low hanging fruit, and for most teams that's providing simple automation, whether that's task automation, maybe a little bit of process automation, and surfacing knowledge, right? Surfacing knowledge to those folks, troubleshooting and triaging, intelligent ticket creation, and then once you kind of get that low hanging fruit taken out of the way, right? You've executed it, things are working great. Then you start to take a step back and you think, what else? Where else can I go with this? What else can I
Hmm.
do? Well, we
Starts
have
getting exciting. Yeah.
Exactly. We already have the agents that are doing some things. Now, every customer gets 7 foundational agents with Rezolve.ai,
Hmm.
and those come out of the box. But again, we provide a Agentic Studio for customers where they can build and what I like to call bake their own custom agents. And that's usually the what's next piece. They've already identified areas that they've tackled, and now they're looking at increasing their ROI, which we're here for the journey with the customer and making sure that they're wildly successful.
So we've everything we've been talking about. This is where it really starts to click. So
Yep.
instead of building something live, let's show what this actually looks like in action. I'm going to show an example. We're multimodal here at Rezolve.ai, and so let's show
Mhm.
let's show an email example where the agents are working for a user who still prefers to communicate through email. Before I play this video, graciously provided to us by our solutions architect JC, he's also going to narrate it. He really understands this well. Do you want to set it up, Chris? Do you have anything that you would like to add?
No, so I mean, just to provide some context, this was for a customer we were working with in the FinOps space,
Mhm.
and I can maybe give a summary after the video, but it's a great way to deliver services via email intelligently, making that channel even more intelligent than just a simple reply, where the AI is reading the email, parsing the data, doing some actionable intelligence on the back end, and all while identifying that it's not just a ticket, but it's a request for service. And the AI is delivering that natively, whether that's through our ITSM or a customer's existing ITSM. So you can go ahead and show the video, Rob.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Hey everybody, this is a quick demo of Rezolve AI's smart mailbox feature. So we're going to be showing you how we can use AI to extract information from emails automatically, create a ticket, and then use the information that we extracted in a meaningful way. So right off the bat here, let's go ahead and send an email. I'm going to prepare an email here where a customer is reporting that they received an invoice for a product that they never actually received, right? So they're saying, hey, we were supposed to receive a delivery of 4 truckloads on June 14th, but we only received 3 of them. I've attached a photo of the delivery log as evidence, and they want something to be done about that. So we're going to go ahead and add a subject to this. We're going to call this invoice dispute. And we're going to say only 3 trucks received, something like that. So let's go ahead and send this email out. And then basically what's going to happen here is that our AI is going to take a look at that email and it's going to find the key pieces of information there. So we provided an invoice number, we provided some additional context about what was wrong, and then it's also going to find out, okay, who sent the email and what customer are they from, right? So it's going to look at my signature at the bottom to see if it can get any information about that. And then once it has that information, it's going to go ahead and create that ticket and preload it with the information. So it takes about a minute or so for that ticket to get logged in here. So we just need to wait a little bit longer. And then after that, what's going to happen is it's going to take the information and then see what it can find about that invoice. So it looks like we have our ticket created here. We have our ticket number up at the top. And then let's take a look at this ticket. So we have the subject that was entered in the email itself. We've got a description coming from the description that I entered in the email. And then we have the name over here. So it knows I sent the email. That's my email address. We've got my first and last name. And it also automatically categorized this for us. So we can see that the domain is ordered to cash. Our category is invoice dispute. And then the subcategory is that delivery quantity discrepancy based off of the description here. If we scroll down, we can see some more information. So we've got the exact invoice number that I included in my email. We've got the name of the customer, which came from my signature at the bottom. We've got the location that I reported, as well as the product that was supposed to be delivered here. And then finally, if we go down a little bit further, we can see that the email itself was attached. So if I click on this, open that up as an attachment, we got the full email with the attachment that I included, so we can see the original that created the ticket. And then at the bottom, we also have a summary of the invoice. So what happened here is that the AI found the invoice number in the email, right? It put it in its proper place, and then that triggered an automation where the AI said, okay, so we have an invoice number. Let me use this to see what other information I can find about this. So it is connected to a separate database that we have of all of our different invoices. And it pulled that information back here so we can see this is the invoice number it was able to find. This is the type of invoice that was logged in the database. And then this is all of the rest of the information. So we can see that the total amount was for 4,000. The amount paid is 0. We have our due date, the current status of it, we have the customer name, and then we have any other notable information or observations that the AI found about that invoice itself. So now as an agent who's working this ticket, I already have all the information about the invoice right here. And this is all coming real time from the database, which means that the more information we add to the invoice, the more it's going to have access to when it automatically puts it here, so that the agent doesn't have to go finding that invoice. We already have what we need. So that's a quick overview of the Smart Mailbox.
Nice. So, Chris, do you want to talk about the significance of what we just saw there?
Yeah, it's pretty powerful, right? I mean, I can't think of any platform that will allow you to essentially read an email and then make autonomous decisions on the basis of that, right? So you're talking about an AI that's intercepting an email, reading it, understanding it, parsing the data into the ticket intelligently. It knows that it needs to do research on that invoice, so looks into the ERP system and parses that data and details that it found on that invoice into the ticket, so that the FinOps analyst now is enabled to go ahead and start working on that ticket on the basis of what was provided and what that information is in the ERP. So you're talking about a lot of time that's saved here, right? In a traditional world, that email would come in, maybe it's manual. That individual would have to read that email, maybe create that ticket manually, append any of those fields. Maybe they would have to download that attachment and append it to the to the ticket. But all of that is the way of the dinosaur. Now we're talking about the AI is actually going and doing that research and providing it there. So now that analyst is ready to go. They're not wasting any time. They know exactly what's going on. And to be honest, that's a very simple example. That's a tip of the iceberg where, if we're talking about an end-to-end workflow, that AI can do much more than that, right? So it's really interesting in terms of what we can support with agentic workflow now.
So let's then go one layer deeper and show how these agents are kind of structured behind the scenes. And before we jump in, Chris, what should people be paying attention to as they watch this?
I think that there are some points that are really important here. So, our Agentic Studio is very powerful. It's exciting to be able to create agents to solve particular business problems. You'll see as JC kind of goes through some of the areas here, but it really lowers the barrier for entry for anyone who's looking to get into this space, right? You don't need to be a super IT whiz to be able to do this stuff. You can actually create an agent conversationally with just dialogue. You can explain the type of AI agent you want to build. The AI will actually help you build that agent. It'll even look for API connectors and MCP connectors that you have already pre-built. It'll look at AI functions, your existing AI's agents that you've already created, and help reference some of that, and then actually help you to bake it. There's a whole learning process where the AI can actually surface learning, so it can help itself improve. So all of these areas are very, very powerful. And you'll notice that in a section that JC shows here in a minute, is that it's not just building individual agents. As Rob had referenced earlier in the call, you can actually build teams of agents where you have an orchestrator agent. Think of it as a manager of other agents whose responsibility is to orchestrate and tell the other agents what to do and make sure that they're staying in line. So now you have specialized agents that can be focused in a particular area. Let's just call it FinOps, or if we're talking about IT, let's talk about maybe problem management, change management, major incident management, or HR. It could be HR operations. So these agents can actually help and really elevate your employees, and so they can focus on other things. So you could go ahead and play, Rob. Otherwise, I'll be talking all day.
No, perfect. No, I appreciate that intro to it.
Of course.
Here we go.
Hey everybody, so this is a quick demo of how you can use Agentic Studio to build agent teams that can do all kinds of things, like integrating with different services, pulling information, and then making intelligent decisions based off of the information that they pulled. So real quick, let's open up our agent teams view here, and we can see that we've got a list of all kinds of teams built up of individual agents that all have specific purposes given to them. If we go over to the top here, we can sort by department. And so we can go over to our finance section and see that we have one team here built for finance purposes that has a whole bunch of agents currently configured for that. Now, these agents are working together to address user issues with things like payroll issues, expense management, and that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and open up an individual agent in this team, and we can see that we have the name of the agent. We've got a description here explaining what this particular agent is for. And if we go over to tools and scroll down a little bit, we can see that we've actually got a whole bunch of tools that have been integrated with this agent so that it can access our ERP system for various tasks that we have. And if we go over to the top here and we go to deploy, we can see that we have a lot of different ways that we can deploy this team of agents. So we've got a public URL that you can access it in, but we also have an API. So if you want integrate this team of agents in an existing software that you guys have, or even a different chat agent, you could actually access it via API here. And if we scroll down further, you can see we can deploy to Teams, Slack, or even WhatsApp. So we have a lot of options. Since you guys have already seen our bot in Teams, let's take a look and see what it can look like on the web. So I'm going to open this in a new tab, and it's going to open up just a really basic web page with our chat interface here. But the cool part is that this chat can actually be embedded in other websites. So if you have like an employee portal or another website that you want to use to make this agent available in, you could embed it directly there and allow users to access it without having to go to this particular web page. So let's jump into a demo here. This is going to be an example where a user is trying to view access to a journal entry that they submitted, but they aren't quite seeing it in the month-end close package yet. So they're trying to figure out what's going on. So I'm just going to go ahead and say I submitted a journal entry for office supplies last week, but it's not showing in the month-end close package. Can you find out what's going on? So we're going to send that, and our team of agents is going to route that to the correct individual agent that's going to access our ERP system and figure out what's happening here. So we can see that it was able to find an entry for last week, and based on the records, it's currently in a parked status. It has not been included in the package because it has not yet been posted, so that makes sense. The entry is currently awaiting for approval. And okay, so we have two options here. It can either notify the approver, or it can create a support ticket for the record to report team to investigate and figure out what's preventing its approval. So I like that option, but before that, I want to ask a follow-up question just to ask, get a little bit more context here. So I'm gonna ask, is the related purchase order delivered? And is the fiscal period still open for posting? So we're going to send that off, typo and all. And it's going to interpret that. And even though I'm asking two questions, it's smart enough to be able to do everything that it needs to do to get my answer, right? So we can see here that based on the service and procurement metrics, the related purchase order is currently marked as delivered. Great. Love to see that. And then as for the fiscal period, it looks like it's still open for posting, but we are approaching that deadline. So let's go ahead and get that ticket created so that the record to report team can make sure that makes it in time. So I'm going to say, can you create a support ticket so that the R2R team can post this before close? Let's fire that off. And it's going to think for a second, and then here we go. All right, it looks like it's going to proceed for ticket creation. We get a summary of what this ticket can look like. And I think that sounds good. Please confirm if I should proceed. And I'm going to say, yes, please. This looks great. And you can see that right now we're displaying some of things like the assumptions that the bot's making. That's actually, we just want to make sure that you guys have access to all of the details here when you're seeing this demo so you can see how smart it is. Obviously, if a user's using this, we would trim that down. Users generally want more concise answers, right? They don't need to see all of the bot's reasoning and that kind of stuff. But for demo, we wanted to make sure that you got to see everything that it's doing. So we're going to scroll down a little bit more here and we can see, okay, perfect. It successfully created the ticket. We have our ticket number, we've got our status and everything. So that looks good. And I should receive a confirmation email and they'll let me know when it's done. Looks good.
Do you have anything that you would like to elaborate on after viewers are watching this? And viewers, please, if you have questions, drop it in the chat. We are here live in the chat to answer your questions. So please do that. But Chris, please elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to. Like, listen, it just makes the ERP system conversational, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you saw how JC was just asking questions
Yep.
about what's going on, and now you're unlocking all this information. You don't have to send an email, you don't have to chase somebody, you don't have to log into the ERP system, you don't have to search for what you're looking for. All of that information is at your fingertips. And this is just one example, right? I know that we talked a lot about FinOps today, but this could be associated with HR, human
Mhm.
resources, your HRS. I've seen a lot of people use this for asset management. So you could say, hey, what assets does Rob own? And the AI could
Mhm.
say, hey, let me pull from the asset repository here are all the assets that Rob owns. I say, hey, what are the assets we purchased within the last 6 months that are due for a warranty update, or maybe the most problem assets we have that have lots of tickets associated with them. So now you're talking about a level of intelligence that essentially just wasn't there. But now all of that's at your fingertips, not just for information, but to actually get work done. And that's really where these specialized agents come into play, to actually handle particular specialized areas to solve particular business problems.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. My computer was running slow the other day, and I actually had a conversation with the agents, and it told me what computers I already had in the asset management. I thought that was
There you
pretty
go.
cool. It pulled up
Yeah.
both before continuing with the troubleshooting.
Mhm.
To our viewers, listen, we're running a little bit behind. We're probably going to go on for another 10 minutes. If you have to drop, that's okay. We're going to drop you. We're going to email you the link so you can watch this video in full when you have more time. But if you can
Mhm.
stick around, probably only about 10 more minutes to go, and we'll finish up here. So, Chris, that was the outcome. This is what it looks like when it's actually working. When people see that, what stands out to them first?
I think the biggest thing that stands out is how, one, conversational the AI is, and two, how intelligent it is to just get information and provide it in the way that the person is seeking it, right? I mean, we're not talking about knowledge in the form of just a troubleshooting guide. We're talking about knowledge in forms, it's in a system, and there's statuses and there's all this information. The AI is able to go there, capture what it needs, and provide actionable information, and then take action and make decisions autonomously. So I think that's kind of the biggest thing that usually resonates with folks.
Yeah, it really does look simple on the surface, but
Mm.
like you just mentioned, there's a lot happening underneath. And let's go just quickly one layer deeper. What's actually happening behind the scenes to make all this possible?
Yeah, I mean, what we're talking about here is a few different things, right? So, first, you're going to have a multi-agent framework, right? That means that you're creating individual agents that are specialized in, let's just call it, FinOps, right?
Mhm.
And each of those agents are specialized in their own particular role responsibility. They have their own tools and purpose, right? When I say tools, it means that they're connecting into something that's what an API connection, an MCP connection. So for those that don't know, we have an MCP hub, which essentially is an integration hub that eliminates the need for an iPaaS solution, right? So we standardize the way that our AI can actually connect and integrate and talk to these various platforms. So now when you're actually creating an agent, even if you're doing it conversationally, the AI can reference the existing connections that you have in that MCP hub to associate those tools with that agent. Now, of course, this is all roles and permissions and governance and all kinds of stuff. So we're not talking about a Terminator situation here. But that really is the level one, right? Then level two is you have the multiple agents that are part of that multi-agent framework, where you have certain agents and their responsibilities may vary different in different ways, right? So you have like a supervisor agent, you have like a task or a reactive agent, and those are taking its direction from the orchestrator agent. And then it all comes together, right? So you're interacting with a virtual support agent, whether that's in Microsoft Teams, in email, in voice, in a mobile app. Maybe it's even in a web chat where you have it embedded in some place. And when you're interacting, you have the high level agent trying to understand where does this need to go to? Oh, we have specialized agents to handle this. I'm going to kick it off to the specialized agent. The specialized agent then decides, hey, I know what I need to do. I can make this decision autonomously. I have connections into the tools I need in order to get this work done. Let me just get some clarifying questions from the employee, captures the information, and then it goes ahead and does the work it needs to do. So that's kind of the broad strokes, Rob, if that's helpful.
It is. And I think this is where people start to wonder, okay, so how does this connect into everything we already have? Like, how are these agents actually plugging into systems like ServiceNow, Workday,
Yeah.
SAP?
Yeah, I mean that's really your MCP hub, right? That's the
Yep.
iPaaS solution that we're talking about, and essentially there's different ways that we can connect into it. Not all platforms have an MCP protocol quite yet, or an A2A. So our platform makes it really easy to connect into platforms that only have APIs, right? And the way that we do this is that we have created a set of normalized tools. So our AI doesn't care what platform it is, right? So let's pick on ITSM, for example. It doesn't care what ITSM that you're connecting into. It already knows the set of things that it would traditionally do in any ITSM, right? Updating a ticket, resolving a ticket, assigning, pulling knowledge, things like that. And essentially what we're doing is when we read the APIs of a platform, we're actually automatically creating an MCP server so that the AI knows how to essentially talk and communicate with the APIs intelligently. So even if the MCP and A2As don't already exist, our platform can handle that and still have that level of intelligence to do the connections across those platforms.
So while teams have the option to replace what they already have, a lot of them opt not to replace anything because, from my understanding, this is a system of intelligence that is tapping into a system of record at this
That's
point.
right. That's right.
And so, are the teams replacing everything, or is this more about orchestrating across what the current ecosystems and what already exists?
It really depends on what they have, right? I mean,
Sure.
so if we're talking about ServiceNow for a second, everyone knows that ServiceNow does a lot. Yeah, but it takes a bit of work to configure and administrate, and ongoing administration can be a little bit of a burden. So some folks opt to jump off of it. It'll save them costs. It'll save them the administration burden, the needing a dedicated admin, and then they could move into a ticketing such as Resolve. Some folks say, hey, ServiceNow is working great. We just want to make it more intelligent. We want to have more actionable intelligence than what we're getting today. And so then, as you had mentioned, Rob, we are the system of intelligence, which means we overlay on top of ServiceNow. We connect into the incident table, problem, change, service catalog, knowledge management, asset management, CMDB, and more, so that we can deliver services, we can have actionable intelligence, and our AI can actually take action. So we do have a lot of customers that just say, hey, make my service now smarter and make it easier and give a better employee experience to our employees. So that's really where we help.
So, what about from a deployment standpoint, Chris? How heavy is this? Like, really?
That's great. That's great. A great question. So, I mean, listen, if we're talking about our 7 foundational agents out of the box, that's super easy, right? I mean, we're talking about the ability to connect it to knowledge, the ability to create automations conversationally. You know, we can get that stood up. Anywhere between 30 and 90 days, right? 45 and 60 days tends to be the sweet spot. Now,
Nice.
if you're looking to get a little bit more challenging, a little bit more in depth in the or Agentic Studio, now you're talking about this needs a little bit of thought and needs a little bit of time, right? You're building a custom agent. You want to bake it. You want to take your time. That's what we are here for, to help you with that. Now, our goal is we want to bake these agents for you, especially when we're talking about FinOps and HR, and we're talking about across the ITSM stack with problem change, major incident management, things like that, so that we can hand it to you and you're good to go. But if you want to create your own custom agents, or you want to configure additional components on the baked agents that we create, of course, you're more than happy to. But I say that creating an agent takes a little bit of time. It doesn't take a lot of effort, just takes a little bit more time to think through it and make sure that the agent is actionable and that's driving real value. And a big piece that JC didn't get a chance to show was the learning tab within that agent, where the AI can actually surface its own learnings and say, hey, if I do this, it actually might improve me. It might give a better experience. I might be able to do this more efficiently. And there's always that human in the loop element where I can review that learning and say, you know what, let's go ahead and change you. So it's really great in terms of how we do that.
So let's jump forward just a little bit. Say a team commits to this, they want in, 6 months, a year in, what's different?
Wow, a lot would be different. I mean, you're talking about huge ROI. I mean, what we see from just the standard 7 foundational agents, if you're talking about knowledge, if you're talking about simple deterministic automation, I mean, you're talking about anywhere between 50, maybe even 70% ticket deflection. You know,
And that's
we've
just the
had
out of the box agents, nothing added.
that's right. I mean, now there's a little bit of automation you need to build, but with our conversational automation, you know, you're great. I think most teams, when
That's
they're
cool.
just talking about knowledge, you're talking anywhere between a 40% ticket reduction, right? I mean, that's huge because the AI can troubleshoot, it can triage. These 7 foundational agents have been tried, tested, they're ready to go. There's nothing you need to do there. So there's a lot of value right out the gate in terms of ROI. But then, you know, if you again talk about the journey, where automation is a journey, that's where you start thinking about where can I take this next. That's where you talk about the Agentic Studio, the MCP hub, you create more automation. But we had a customer that we work with. They've got around 120,000 employees across the globe. We're doing shared services with them for IT, HR, and they had a 85% ticket reduction, right? We're talking about 85% of the time it is being handled entirely by AI, and only 15% of the time it's actually going to a human to actually take that action to get some additional
That is a
support.
significant shift.
It's incredible. So you've got companies renegotiating their MSP contract. You've got them elevating their teams. You know, for a lot of companies that are growing really quickly, like they're doing acquisitions, they're growing their team. What's really great is they're doing more with less. Right? Originally, they may need to hire more headcount to be able to deliver the appropriate level of service to their employees. But now they don't need to hire additional folks because the AI is actually handling all the additional workload, and everyone, you know, is cool as a cucumber, right? So, pretty cool.
So I'm going to leave it here because this really is the question that's behind all of this.
Yep.
To my viewers, over the next 12 to 24 months, do you keep scaling work the way you always have, you know, with more tickets, more coordination, more overhead, or do you start really thinking about how the work itself gets done? Because that is the shift. And if this is something that you're actively thinking about, we are happy to spend time walking you through what this could look like in your environment.
Absolutely.
Just, you know, get a hold of one of us. The links are going to be in the description. We're going to be sending you a follow-up email after this webinar. And, you know, Chris, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me. And to everyone viewing, thank you for joining us today. Guys, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be showing off our Creator Studio, which is a conversational automation. This is a huge disruptor in the industry now, and I can't wait to talk to you guys about it. We're talking building full automations using one sentence conversationally in 5 minutes. And of course, you're going to want your team to test it, approve it, and everything else. But this is very real, and it's happening now. Yeah. So, Chris, thanks again for joining. To the viewers, thanks again for joining. Please reach out to us at Rezolve.ai. That's REZOLVE.ai to talk more about this. We'd love to share some success stories with you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.